Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome or welcome back to the garden, my happy place to talk about scary things. Today on Garden Chat we have somebody calling himself Right Conscious.
Why does Yukio Mishima hate women so much? If you guys don't already know, Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Mishima here on YouTube.
This is a confluence of everything I love: feminism, fiction writing, and ripping the friendly mask off of extremism. He talks a lot about consciousness raising, but the basic premise of his content seems to be fear-mongering, fear success, fear women. Most of his stuff is behind a paywall, so it was difficult to find out a whole lot about this guy. But we're here to watch him desperately try and rationalize how Neil Gaiman is not a predator at all. Not at all. Not at all.
They got Neil Gaiman, everybody.
They did? Who? What terrible predator has been stalking such a prime example of a modern media maker?
Neil got. Neil made so many girls with daddy issues call him master that he kicked off a woke Ragnarok.
The apocalypse has come for Neil, you guys. Holy shit. Is it contagious?
And I sense bad omens ahead.
I guess the puns are mandatory, right?
For us, if we do not kick off a literary renaissance, and there are a ton of lessons to learn about the cancellation of Neil Gaiman, if we as writers are going to create an educational awakening out in the world.
Oh, okay. It's a reason people need your content. Nice. But I believe he has a personal stake in this. He seems to really admire Neil Gaiman, and possibly have emulated him a little too closely for comfort.
Because they sent his ass to Neverwhere, everybody. They sent the most beloved author of our time to Lakeside, Wisconsin because he had too many hoes at the end of the lane.
Yes, it's the women's fault.
And here on Right Conscious, we are trying to kick off a literary renaissance that can transcend cancellation, because if we create 50,000 high-level literary authors who aren't connected to any publishing house, any major motion picture corporation, aren't reliant off Amazon, and are willing to speak about their work and create an audience out in the world, then cancellations like this are not going to be possible.
Public shaming will always be possible, especially if everybody already knows who you are.
The only cancellations or things that will be possible are if someone takes you to criminal court, not civil court, not the public court.
Actual legal proceedings and the court of public opinion are two different things with different rules. They both get things wrong all the time. But it's a false dichotomy anyway, because as we shall see, at least one of his most recent accusers has filed charges with the police.
And even if that happens, even let's say there's a terrible person in the movement and they get arrested and sent to prison, there'll be 49,999 more of us to continue forward.
49,999 of what exactly?
Here on Right Conscious, we are trying to kick off a literary renaissance that can transcend cancellation.
Right. Why would you need to do that, though?
But right now, we are being weak as authors. We are relying on people like Neil Gaiman, who hasn't written a real novel in 20 years, everybody. Hear that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like he's been busy pursuing more dangerous game.
Nazi boys, sorry if the pronunciation was a little off.
Nancy Boys. Oof, I'm not familiar with this one, but he had me going there for a second.
Came out back in 2005, and since then he's written books for children, written Norse mythology, which isn't a real novel, and written books with other authors. He hasn't had an actual novel out in 20 years.
But I think this does demonstrate a change of focus at the very least, if not a drop-off in creative efforts.
And what have we done as authors to fill that vacuum? What have we done to get away from publishing houses, to get away from the cancel mob?
You mean the audience? The world is going to pass judgment on the work you put out there, if you're lucky. For guys like this, the difference between the audience and the mob is whether they agree with you or not.
Because you already know that if you start to create an educational and spiritual awakening out in the world, let's say you do it independently and you get some momentum with publishing houses, you are going to get canceled way harder than Neil is.
That's right. You should fear success.
Because the last thing that the dark forces out in the world want is people becoming independently educated and gaining the ability to control their emotions.
Independently educated, so standard curricula are bad? That feels like a non sequitur, doesn't it?
Because that would decrease the need for government. That would decrease the need for militaries, corporations, and so many other things.
But shit, if they contribute to all that, well, goddamn. But like, people learn to control their emotions, develop emotional intelligence best under stable conditions. And perhaps some sort of standardized education along these lines might go a long way to help with that. I think guys like this wouldn't be able to reliably get money off content poking at their audience's emotional flashpoints.
And what do governments, militaries, corporations, and other powerful institutions do to people that are taking away their power? What have they done all throughout time? They ruin their lives.
Fear success. You should fear success.
And we have an opportunity for the first time ever with places like Substack for authors who won't get rid of you. No matter what you say and no matter what you do, Substack is going to have your back.
Oh, okay, so that company is good? One assumes he makes some money over there. But that turn was so quick, I'm dizzy.
And in my opinion, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law.
Yes, in a courtroom, in America anyway, you are innocent until proven guilty, which was established to counterbalance the way the court of public opinion tends to work, but it does not and cannot completely override and eliminate it.
If someone is being sexually assaulted, they should take it to the court of law, not to the court of the public, because in the court of law, all the documents, all the texts, all the allegations are going to be sifted through, shown to the public, shown to a jury, argued over, over the course of a week or more, and we will get a resolution. And when you look at people like Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby and others, or Larry Nassar, there is an overwhelming amount of allegations and evidence that they were doing wrong. And it's like, okay, boom, these people are terrible, lock them up.
Oh, we may get to all of that yet. This stuff only came out back at the beginning of July.
And so when we look at the 5 allegations so far against Neil Gaiman.
Okay, buckle your seatbelts, grab your beverage, and brace yourself. Because this shit is disgusting. But Neil Gaiman has been counting on women's silence for too long already.
Some of them go back to 2003, everybody. And the allegations are that they had consensual sex. But while in that relationship, she alleged that he penetrated her despite her objecting because she was in the midst of a UTI.
Penetrating someone against their will. There's a word for that, isn't there? Grape, swape, malape, hornswoggle, kerfuffle, something like that.
Guys, let's be honest. Really? 21 years later? That's what you can come up with suddenly with the contagion of everyone starting to blame Neil?
Who is everyone? This is the first one.
Like I said, I'm willing to read some stories. I'm willing to read and be open-minded, but 21 years later? And what kind of precedence is this setting?
That there is no amount of time that passes that makes that kind of behavior okay.
Are people today, now this is setting a precedent that if someone gets assaulted today, they don't need to call the police, they don't need to do anything. They can blame someone 20 years later. And how can we account for this?
It's called statute of limitations, my dude.
How can we have any idea? Text messages really didn't exist back in 2003. How can we prove any of this?
I don't know. I guess that's a job for the investigators, and I can't wait.
The next allegation is from Scarlett, who said that she worked as a nanny for Neil and his child, and a couple hours after they met, they were bathing together. All right, everyone. Really? This is it? So she's working, says, "Hello, I'm your nanny. My name is Scarlett." And then a couple hours later, they're bathing together? What kind of person, first of all, what kind of person are you, Scarlett, that you meet a random ass dude, then you're bathing with him hours later?
What kind of a person meets a new hire and just to see if they're a good fit for the position, conducts the final interview naked?
And that's just how I react.
And that she told the outlet that they cuddled and made out in the bath.
No, he said that.
Let me get away with that.
Which just highlights the nature of Gaiman's defense here. Sure, I hurt them, but they wanted it.
Let me get away with that.
Oh, sorry. She claimed that he sexually assaulted her in the bath. And this brings up another point because Neil Gaiman allegedly told the outlet that broke all this that he did have a 3-week relationship with this person, but they never actually had sex, that they engaged in phone sex, digital penetration. What a word.
That's not what that means. Is this a joke? Or does he really not know that that's not what digital means here?
And here is a thought for everyone who is trying to engage in this literary renaissance. And this is going to be hard, but I knew this was going to be a problem years ago. When Neil Gaiman broke up with his wife and he said that we were polyamorous and we broke up because we just wanted to have sex with other people, I was like, oh shit, Neil's going to get got eventually.
He wanted to fuck around and he was going to find out. Yeah, this kind of predatory behavior has been too normalized for way too long, and it should come back to bite you in the ass.
Because when I look back at the last 10 years of my life,
Are you ready for this? Sounds like maybe he's about to skirt the edge of admitting to some really toxic behavior, right? Oh no, he's gonna come right out and say it.
I've only been in a room alone with a woman, 5 different women: my wife, my ex-girlfriend, my mom, my sister, and my boss. Maybe like I don't even think my grandma. That's it. There's no allegations. There's nothing coming out.
This begs the question, how did you get the wife? How do you date with a rule like that? So, never alone in a room. One assumes that this extends to things like cars, so no lady cabbies for you. Elevators. You can't even be alone with a woman in an elevator. Never. That must be really hard to keep up with. Why on earth would you turn your life into an obstacle course like that?
It's like, and you know, the kind of hookup culture of today where you sleep with all these different people does create scenarios where they can all come back and say later on that you did something crazy. And so it's like you are putting yourself in this position.
Hookup culture has normalized the worst in dating behavior. But the way we start to fix that is to collectively decide that this behavior should bring heavier consequences to keep entitled psychos in check.
And the people who are preyed upon most often usually are single. Because there are these situations where I think someone is in a consensual relationship and then they see an opportunity, I don't know, for money, or if they are bitter, or maybe they actually got assaulted. We don't actually know.
Maybe they did. Yeah, maybe they did. Maybe there's plenty of examples of why that seems plausible. And maybe someone ought to look into that.
But unless there is a police report very soon after the incident where there is kind of an objective statement about what happened, and sometimes that is the case. There have been examples in the Me Too movement where someone did file a police report and it just got filed away and no one ever cared or no one ever did anything.
Or, as in the case of Scarlett the Nanny, she did just that. New Zealand police told Tortoise Media, that's the outlet that broke this story, that they had made a number of attempts to speak to key people as part of this ongoing investigation, adding that there are a number of factors, including the location of all parties. Sounds to me like Neil might be avoiding them.
And moving on to some of the more fun allegations, apparently Caroline Wallner, who isn't the prettiest looking lady, she looks like if Ragnarok was a word, was a human. She lived apparently in his New York City property from 2014 to 2021. And her husband also lived there, though, until 2017 when they got divorced. And apparently she was unemployed and Neil Gaiman was helping them out. And this is her statement. There were little hints of, we are going to need the house. So she's basically saying, this is your house and I'm going to need to live in it for free. And I remember saying, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. That's when he would just come to my studio and make me give him a blowjob. And he can say it was consensual, but why would I do that? It was because I was scared of losing my place. First of all, was it your place or was it his place? So it was his property, so it wasn't your place. So you were there, and I don't know what ended up happening. But apparently you were living there for free for years. And did he exploit you? Maybe. I don't know. You know, stuff like that happens all the time. That's a very classical sense. But why didn't you say no?
That is a rather classical sense, isn't it? It's rather the nature of exploitation, really. You lack the capacity somehow to make it stop.
Why did you get in that position? I mean, this is once again a very kind of sticky situation.
Is that a joke? Is it a Freudian slip? Either way, gross.
Because most of the time, if a man is paying for a woman to live in an apartment and do these things, and that's called having a sugar daddy, and there's something expected in return. I'm not saying that that's right, and I don't know what happened here, but I think it would be crazy to think that maybe wouldn't be the expectation, that you could just leech and mooch off someone in a seemingly very expensive property for years and years.
Yeah, clearly charitable is not a description that Neil Gaiman holds dear to his heart. He's all about number one. That's what this pattern of behavior says. And you are desperate to rationalize it, lest these consequences make you question your outlook and your leadership abilities.
And people lose their house all the time. It's crazy. It's called get a job, Caroline. Like, what are you doing? What were you doing those 7 years that you were living there? You got no money? You did nothing? Like, Like, I understand these are terrible situations, and maybe there's stuff that I don't understand that happened.
No, I don't think you do. I also think there's a lot missing here overall, but I think he may get his day in court sooner or later.
And then Wallner claims that Gaiman said, he used to tell me, call me your master. Tell me you want it. Tell me you want it. He would choke me sometimes. And I'm kind of laughing because, I've listened to a lot of Neil Gaiman audiobooks, and like I can't even do his voice.
And that's just how I react. Let me get away with that.
Neil sounds kinky. I don't know if there is something wrong. I mean, it's not normal, but it's not in the crazy realm, like of men wanting to be called master or things like that.
Crazy? Maybe not. Destructive? Absolutely. Corrosive to any social contract by dehumanizing someone, even verbally. Sex is not a LARP, you guys. That stuff has consequences.
I'm pretty sure this is just called kind of kinky sex. Maybe Caroline, living up there in Woodstock, just has no idea about that.
Maybe you, living under whatever rock you crawled out from under, don't know that most people do not enjoy pain.
But anyway, and I feel like there's so many double standards because real artists don't kink shame, right? Like, Caroline, don't you know about that? That's one of the tenets. That's Neil's kink. He wants to be called master. Like, why are you hating? Like, that's his expression.
I hope that little giggle means that this was a joke, but I don't think so. Maybe it's embarrassment at how brainlessly entitled this sounds.
Another one, listen to this. This is crazy. I mean, I should have led with this one. There's Julia Hobsbawm said in 1986, before Neil Gaiman was anybody. I mean, how old was he in 1986?
26. Easiest research I did all day.
Gaiman made an aggressive, unwanted pass at her flat and jumped on her out of the blue and forced his tongue into her mouth and pushed her onto the couch before she broke free. That's 40 years ago, everybody.
Again, this sounds like a pattern. Once a predator, always a predator.
I mean, that is ridiculous. I'm not even going to talk on that one.
Harder to prove, sure, but that doesn't make it ridiculous.
So then we have another one back in 2012, and a girl named Claire, who is anonymous, using a pseudonym, won't come out and actually say her real name.
I can't imagine why not. Why refuse the magical portal of fame and riches that is publicly accusing a powerful man? Silly, silly girl.
Said that they had a 10-month relationship, and that at a party on the ride back to the hotel, he tried to feel her up, and she felt gross but kissed him back. And he supposedly told her during this incident, and this is how you know that this one isn't true. Like, let's be honest. He said to me, I'm a very wealthy man, and I'm used to getting what I want. Like, sit the fuck down. Neil Gaiman, the most famous author, most eloquent person in the world. Like, maybe I'm just totally into delusion. People don't talk like that. I'm a very wealthy man. I'm used to getting what I want. Like, no one talks like that. Like, what? That seems a little bit out of character for him. Maybe not. Like I said, maybe I'm kind of whitewashing all of this, but that's like the sleaziest of the sleaziest.
Just because it doesn't line up to your lofty standard of Gaiman-esque eloquence does not mean he didn't say it. Plenty of people who are good in print are terrible in personal conversation.
And then apparently she has a letter from him. Where is this letter? I'd love to see this letter.
Maybe you will.
Where he apologized to her and blamed what he did on his autism diagnosis. And I would actually like this one to be true because that's like the most 2024 thing to do. Like, blaming your autism. Like, hey, I stuck my tongue down your throat because I just, have autism that's been undiagnosed and no one's ever known about, and I've never told anyone in my life.
That would be a terrible excuse. So you hope it's true? Is this a joke? Like, it doesn't even make sense.
But this is what happens. This is what happens when you play with fire. This is what happens when you engage with the culture, which will cancel you, which will eat you alive.
Right. Yes. Sell your books. Start a literary renaissance, but don't engage with the culture. How's that exactly?
As soon as you start making movies and you are on sets and you start, accumulating a ton of love and people see that you are an object for exploitation, then who knows, people from 1986 are going to maybe say you did something.
Yes, that's right. Poor Neil Gaiman is the real victim in all of this.
And like I said, I will correct myself if we get some proof, but innocent until proven guilty, everybody. Innocent until I see some form of evidence. Saying someone did something means nothing unless you have proof of it, unless you had the police assess what happened.
The police in New Zealand, at the very least, are doing that right now.
And Neil Gaiman has denied all of these allegations, supposedly. And so I think the lesson here is your reality of trying to build this famous life as an author. If you get published, if you get this, your movie, your novel gets turned into a movie. This is where it actually leads a lot of the time now, you guys.
So the lesson here is fear success, not maybe, I don't know, don't be a predator.
And you have to carefully watch yourself. And like, I think it's Seinfeld. He won't hug women. He won't hug even women who are his friends. He has a rule. He's not alone with any woman under any circumstance in a room. He's never alone with a woman. He is preventing himself and letting people know that I've been keeping this practice up for 20 years, so you can't screw with me.
Jerry Seinfeld doesn't trust women. Well, that's an interesting little tidbit. And here I thought his voice was the worst thing about him.
And so I'm not saying that you need to do that. I'm not saying that you should be scared. You shouldn't be scared.
But you just explained why we should. It's Ragnarok. It's Armageddon. Come for the most articulate man on earth. What hope is there for any of the rest of us?
But you should be building your platform over on Substack. You should be getting people on your email list that can't be taken away from you.
So don't be scared. Just do as you say. Yeah, I've never heard that one before.
You should be maybe figuring out even how to publish outside of Amazon. And maybe I know someone in Tucson who is an author, and he has his own machine. He saved up and bought like some bookmaking machine for $15,000 and sends it all off himself and makes a ton of money that way from it. He makes $5 more a book at least, and they don't take that long to make. Now he doesn't have to rely on anybody.
He's still relying on his audience. He's still relying on the readers to purchase his book. What does he do? Send out flyers?
And so I'm excited to see where all this goes because I hope Neil stands his ground. I hope that if any of these allegations are true, they take it to criminal court because that is where we handle things in the modern world. Even though I have my problems with like the criminal court and that obviously can be corrupted, it is better than nothing. It is better than just someone getting canceled because Neil Gaiman's shows are now being pulled. Like, I don't know if The Sandman's going to be pulled, but Good Omens, the Ocean at the End of the Lane movie, probably a bunch of other stuff are now gone. All these opportunities. Someone who had, probably one of the first authors of our time who was getting his whole body of work put into film, put into plays, has now had that opportunity tarnished.
Boo hoo hoo. Yeah, they're canceling him in real time. Makes you wonder if somebody out there knows something we don't. And this guy could not be fanboying harder. He desperately does not want to believe that the most eloquent man in the world could possibly be a predator.
And it probably would have been better if he just kept writing novels and stayed away from all of this craziness.
Could not agree more. Why does success mean you're entitled to abuse women, Neil? Well, it doesn't, and we will collectively learn this lesson over and over until we get it.
And so if you guys are down for the literary renaissance, I will see you guys back here very soon because just in a second, I'm going to post a video about William Faulkner's writing advice for people just like you.
I don't think I'm his target audience, but this one hits me a little closer to home. I wouldn't exactly call myself a Neil Gaiman fan. I read Neverwhere because I enjoyed the miniseries, which was a faithful adaptation of the book. But basically, the lesson here, yet again, is that creeps can be anyone, they can be anywhere. And you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. The cover story here being, an artsy-fartsy fiction writer. I'm sorry, real artists don't kink shame. Real artists have to protect themselves because we're sensitive people. I'm not going to say Neil Gaiman's never written anything worth reading, but the man is obviously a predator. And there should not be any room for that in literature or movies, or TV, or anywhere. I have been Rad Mom. Thank you so much for joining me out here in the garden today for our little exploration of the charges against Neil Gaiman, the writer. As I say, this brings together a lot of my personal favorite things to chat about, and I look forward to seeing you at the top of the hour for the live stream where we can carry on a little longer. And if you made it this far, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can all work together to bring feminism back into the real world. Because as you can see, we desperately need it. And next week here at 11 for a brand new video. All right, I'll see you there. Bye. And bring him down and put his arm in the pocket where his leg was. Yeah. Yeah. There we go.